Hi, I'm Kirsten with Unfinished Wood Co. And today we are going to make this awesome welcome sign that's perfect for your front porch. But the greatest thing is you also get all of these different shapes that make it perfect for every season, all year long. Let's get started. So when you order your porch sign, you are going to get so much. You are going to get this giant 48-inch wood sign, and you are also going to get all of the laser cut wood letters that spell welcome. And you are also, this is the most exciting thing, you are going to get so many, you're going to get 12 laser cut wood shapes, one for every single season for the entire calendar year. So the first thing we're going to do to complete our project today is I am going to choose to do a white barnwood finish. And it's so simple, but you can do anything you want to your background sign. For today's, I'm going to use folk art chalk paint, which is great for outdoors. And I am also going to use folk art wood tint, which again is great for outdoors. So the first step, using the white chalk paint, I am going to use a larger flat brush. Is all you do is you base coat your wooden sign. The great thing about the chalk paint is it covers in just one coat. It's very easy to sand, and it is great for indoor or outdoor. The wood is very smooth and perfect for painting. There's no prep needed. So you are going to paint your entire sign. Always make sure that you get those edges. You just want to make sure that it's finished and looks complete. So you are going to paint your entire sign white, and then you are going to let that dry. So once that's dry, this is the greatest thing about the folk art chalk paint. It sands so easy. So all you're going to do, this is medium grit sandpaper, is you are going to sand mostly the edges, maybe a little bit on the center seam so you create that barnwood finish. And you can see how easy that paint lifts right off, exposing the wood underneath. You're just going to sand those edges. Sand it more or less depending on the finish that you want. So I'm just going to sand all of those edges. I'm going to use a dry cloth and remove all that extra dust. But it's so great because it exposes that with very little effort. This board has been totally sanded. You can see where the wood is now exposed. So now the fun thing we're going to do is we are going to use the folk art wood tint. So for the wood tint, I want you to have a little bowl. Give that wood tint a shake. I'm going to pour a little bit of that into the bowl, just a little. You can always add more. And then using a large brush, I am going to get that brush really wet with my water and add a little bit into the bowl of stain. You don't want to add too much. You want to have 1 part stain, 1 part water, to maybe 3 parts stain. The more water you add, the lighter the tint becomes. The less you add, the darker. So use that to make it the color that you want to distress the white with. I'm going to add a little bit more water. Now the trick to this is using that same scrap cloth. I'm going to dip that into the water, squeeze that out, but you want that to be damp. Not soaked, but just damp. Then you're going to take your brush and just along the edges, because you can see where that stain soaks right into the areas that you sanded, that exposed the raw wood. You don't want to do the whole thing. You want to do it in sections. So once you apply that, you want to use that damp cloth to rub that in. Add more stain as you go. Again, I'm starting on the edges and down the center. And then I'm just going to kind of wipe that with the damp cloth. That gives that great distressed, aged barnwood finish. You can see where the exposed wood picked up the stain and left a darker edge. Right there, you can see where it left a darker detail. Again, it's all based on how much of the white you remove when sanding. So then you're going to do that to your entire board. Once that is dry, you've got a beautiful distressed, almost like a faux finish, a barnwood faux finish board. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side. And what we did for our letters is we're going to use the same wood tint. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and using that same stain that I put into the bowl, all I'm going to do is dip directly into that and paint all of my laser cut letters for welcome. You can see how beautiful the wood is. It shows the wood grain when you're using this stain. And again, the thicker, or not the thicker, the less water you add, the darker the stain, and the more water you add, the lighter the stain. If you want to use that same rag and kind of rub it off a little bit, it'll just have a little bit more wood grain and be a little bit of a lighter stained finish. But you don't have to worry about your edges, because with the laser cut, they have a beautiful dark burnt edge, which looks really nice with this stain. So you are just going to base coat that, wipe it off if that's the look that you prefer, and you are going to do that to all of your letters. So then you have got welcome, totally base coated with the stain, beautiful wood grain, and that is dry. So I'm going to show you a few tricks to applying this to your sign. I like to lay out my sign. And then before you glue any of them down, make sure you lay all of them out. Don't just start gluing them down, because you want to make sure that your spacing is perfect. I always like to do a little trick. So for example, here I'll use 2 fingers, 3 fingers. It's just an easy way to know that you've got the same space. So you're just going to roughly lay those down. You're going to use that center seam of the sign as your center. And I always just like to use 2 fingers to start, because you can tell then that you need to move it up a little bit. But just very simple measuring. Yeah, you want even space on the top and the bottom. So once that's done, I like to use just an all-purpose tacky glue. You can use a wood glue, you can use Gorilla Glue, but just something that is perfect for outdoor use. So starting at the top, you do not need a ton of glue, because you don't want to seep it around the edges. I'm just going to put a few dots of glue. This is just all perfect craft glue that is perfect for outdoors. I'm going to put that on my W. Again, I'm going to kind of eyeball, because I've used 2 fingers as a guide. Make sure that you use that center line of your barnwood sign to center your letter. And then you're just going to do that all the way down, and that's going to be perfect. Make sure you do not glue on your O. That's a little tip. Don't get carried away and go all the way down, because your O is the one that you remove to add your seasonal shapes. So you get 12 laser cut shapes when you order your porch sign, and these are all the different shapes that you get. And these are very simple painting techniques. I want to teach you the technique that distresses the edges that you'll see on all of these different shapes. You'll see it around the bunny, around the ornament. I want to teach you also that you can add just a simple pattern with a stencil. That's a stencil, the butterfly, the ornament, just adding cute details, dots with the end of your brush. So I want to teach you a few techniques so you can paint all of these different shapes for your seasonal sign. So the first simple technique I want to show you is doing that distress. So I've base coated my snowflake, and this is just a little scrap piece of wood that is smooth on one side. It can be a little bit smaller, it can be a little bit bigger, but it's just a simple scrap piece of wood. I'm going to use that same chalk paint that I used to base coat my sign. I'm going to put a little bit of that, just a little, goes a long way. I'm going to put a little bit of that onto my palette. And I'm also going to put Folk Art acrylic. This is Jamaican Sea. And I just want you to know that the folk art acrylics work great with the chalk paints. You can intermix the two all the time. So I have base coated my snowflake with the white chalk paint. And again, you'll see you get a great smooth finish with one simple coat. I love to not paint the edges of these laser pieces just because I love the dark brown edge. So I just very carefully paint only the top. You're going to paint your entire snowflake white and you're going to let that dry. Once that's dry, this is a great tip. So using your little wooden block, you are going to dip that into your paint. See how you've got a lot of paint on there? Then you're going to dip it off onto the side. Keeping that very flat with your surface. You don't want to go on an angle. You don't want to go on the edge. You want to be flat with your surface. Not a lot of pressure. You are just going to lightly pull that around the edge of your snowflake. Pick up paint when you need it. And see how that just jumps around, creating that chippy, weathered paint look. That is such a great technique. The other technique I want to show you is adding some elements, just some design details using a stencil. So this flower, I am using folk art chalk paint, which this is, what is this? This is prominent pink. And I am just going to squirt a little bit of that onto my palette. I'm going to wash that medium-sized brush. Always dry it off. You don't want to add too much water to your project. I'm just going to base coat this flower. Again, look at that beautiful coverage. The chalk paint is so great. The wood is already smooth. There's no need to prep. I'm going to base coat that completely with the solid pink. Remember, I'm going to skip the edges because I love that dark brown burned edge. And I'm going to let that dry. So once your flower is base coated, let that dry completely. I just want to show you how easy it is. This is just a cute little flower stencil. It doesn't have to fit your shape exactly. It's just going to add some detail and some texture to your design. So I'm just going to use that center element, and I'm going to use a stencil brush. And on my plate, I've got a little bit of white and a little bit of pink that I used earlier. I'm just going to mix those two together, creating a lighter pink, kind of a tone on tone. More white will make it lighter. With a tip with stenciling is get paint on your brush, but then also tap some of it off. You don't want too much paint that will then bleed into your stencil. And then you're just simply going to pounce up and down. You can do that, or you can do a little swirl pattern, whatever you prefer. But you're just adding a simple painting technique to give some details to your seasonal shapes. Very little paint is the only tip when stenciling. And you're going to lift that off, and you've got a beautiful accent to your basic shape. Once that's dry, all I'm going to do is, following that area where the stencil was, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow acrylic. Again, the acrylic works great with the chalk paint. You can intermix the two. Using that smaller brush, clean it with water. Again, remove most of the water. You don't ever want to work with a wet brush. And all I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of white. And nothing needs to be perfect, but I just want to add a center, a yellow center to my cute little flower for spring. So I'm just going to use the edge of that brush, go right over the center of that stencil, and create the center to my flower. So then you have got a perfect little flower shape. And those simple techniques are something that you can use to complete all of your shapes. So now the fun is adding the shapes all year long. So this is a little trick that I want to teach you guys to make it very easy and foolproof. The best way I like to attach the seasonal shapes is using these little Velcro dots. So I don't ever even use my O. So I'm going to put that in a drawer and maybe use it in between seasons. So my sign is completely dry. My letters are glued on. All my glue is dry. And here is the space where my O would go. Now, a little tip when applying your Velcro dots is go through and find your shape that is the smallest in the center. So that would be your butterfly. And what I want you to do is don't just apply your Velcro randomly, because then these will hang at different angles and you will be super mad. So the tip is take your Velcro dot and you want to take the soft side, and I want you to attach that, remove it from the adhesive backing. I want you to attach that to the center of your butterfly. Then instead of putting the back part on your board, I want you to put the Velcro together on that shape. Then remove the adhesive backing. So this is the dot. This is the dot that is going to stay on your board. So then, using again that center line, I want you to center your butterfly where that shape would go and press that down. Then very carefully pull the Velcro apart and you'll see that you've got that dot centered on your board. So then every other shape, put the dot that will go on the back of the shape. Don't put it on the shape. Put it on the Velcro dot. Remove the adhesive. Take your next shape and center that where you want it and press that down. You're picking up that adhesive and attaching it to your shape. You want to continue to do that. So like the bunny, for example, you don't know where the center is, so you want to take your next dot, put it on the Velcro, remove the adhesive, and then position your bunny where you want him. Press that down, and then pull that off. What that does, it allows your dot, let's do one more. It allows your shape to be exactly where you want it every season. I'm putting my Velcro on there. I'm very carefully removing the adhesive, centering my ornament where I want it, pushing that down so the Velcro attaches to the dot, and then lightly pulling that off. Again, that is just a great tip so that every season, when you put your shape on there, it's exactly where you want it. So now that you've applied your Velcro dots, so all of your shapes will hang perfectly for the year, when you put your sign outside, just another tip is if it is exposed to the weather, you could just give it a good spray with any all-purpose outdoor varnish. That was fun. The greatest thing about this project is changing out your shapes all year long. I keep mine in a little basket, but a little tip is you can always add extra Velcro dots to the back and you can store all of your shapes on the back of your sign. There is a shape for every season. Spring, summer, fall, and winter. We can't wait to see what you do with yours. So let's get started. Like that?